listening to All That with Nikki and Cat,
a podcast featuring real stories from real people who are real relatable.
Our goal is to bring you entertainment, knowledge, and an inside look on topics in line with health, wellness, and personal growth.
Tune in every Tuesday to join us on our journey. Let's get real. Here's a little song I wrote. You might want to sing it. No, don't worry. Be happy.
We're definitely high on happy vibes right now. What's up, y'all? It's episode 15.
Woo-hoo.
So this week we had Miss Chelcee Etchison on with us this week. And Chelcee is an anthropologist. She is a wild woman. She is a wanderlust with her very own travel blog. And just a bowl full of knowledge in all things spirituality, traveling, right down to like the tips and tricks to start off on your first trip to the crystal that you'll hold in your hand as you meditate on the side of a mountain. Mm-hmm. So how do you think it went? Because I obviously have no words.
No, she was amazing. I love her aura, and I just love her as a person. And she's so knowledgeable, and it's definitely just her experiences and everything like that is so inspiring. Mm-hmm. And I definitely I thought it went really well.
Yeah, I love how openly vulnerable she was.
Yes.
Like, she just... We all like just instantly bonded on just like being a little bit nervous, just because Nikki and I are so interested in all things that Chelcee knows about. So like we were just like anxious right. to have that conversation. And then of course, you know, Chelcee experienced a little bit of nerves as well. So I think that bonded us together. Yeah. Like I was just telling Nikki, like, I mean, just being honest with you guys, like I had to do a couple of takes, and that I don't usually have to do that, but I think that seeing that kind of set everyone's nerves at ease a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I think that we had to go through that for a reason. So yeah, everything happens for a reason. Yes. And this was just a truly magical night.
Yeah, it really was. The vibes were good. Just like I said, her aura is just amazing.
Yeah, just the energy was right. Everything was, it was very low key. We just had conversation. Nothing was rushed. That's what I love about her, is like she's taking the time out of her life to be a part of this. Yeah. And just to not be on any type of like time schedule or, you know, just any type of rush through anything. Like she looked through each one of mine and Nikki's crystals individually, suggested which ones we should use for which types of rituals that we were asking her about, like what channels what. She is even helping me with crystals for my animals. So my animals are getting pretty old. They deal with a lot of anxiety, a lot of arthritis. Sam, bless her heart, she's got really bad allergies. So she's even helping us out with that. So, and I mean, we talked about everything. We talked about traveling, how to get started with that, her experiences with that. We talked about spirituality, how she grew to become such a proud spiritual being. We talked about the divine feminine in each one of us, which that was really inspiring. We talked about soulmates and relationships and you know, finding that balance with your partner. We covered everything. Yeah. Everything. It was truly magical.
A lot of her stories gave me chills too, because it was just like, wow.
Yeah. She tells some really great stories. Just has some really great insight, and just a vibrant, happy, just blessing of a being. So we couldn't be more honored to have her on this episode. So, without further ado, perks and peeves this week. So, you want to go first?
Sure.
All right.
So my perk and peeve kind of go hand in hand. So I would definitely say a perk is that my schedule changed at work, and it gives me more time in the day, which everyone's heard me like preach about how there's not enough time in the day. So it definitely works out for like myself, for my family. And I don't know. I just feel like I have more time in the day to get stuff done. And like I said, spend time with family and stuff like that. But the peeve of it, which like I said goes hand in hand, the peeve would be that with Chris's new job, his schedule is literally like I get off and by the time I get home, he's already left for work. And because I have to work so early now, by the time he gets home, I'm sleeping. So like during the week, we like never see each other.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
You guys will be fine. You guys have definitely made it through a rainbow of everything. So, I mean, you'll totally be fine. But it sucks, and I feel for you.
But a huge, I guess, perk also is that we both have weekends off. Mm-hmm. So, like, we do have that to kind of...
You know for sure that you have those 2 days.
Yeah. To where we can kind of connect again and be like, okay, this was a long week apart. Mm-hmm. That's, you know...
Yep, and that's exactly what it's going to take is just focus on that.
Yeah. Focus so on I'm trying not to think of it as like a negative thing.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. I feel for you, but like I said,
yeah,
you guys will be okay. All right, so my perk, Nick and I, we're back on that train again, y'all. So it's fall. Everyone's like, you know, back to school, back on track. Summer's over. You don't have a barbecue every weekend anymore. So of course we're gonna try to get our shit together. So this morning, you know, went grocery shopping, you know, got a workout in, whatever. You know, he's gonna come home from work and work out. I'll probably go down there and do some stuff with him. So I'm super excited. Can you tell? No, I am. This is my perk. I'm very excited. It's been an interesting summer, but Mama's got to get back on track. So it is what it is. Work hard, play hard. Anyways.
Work hard, play hard.
But speaking of going grocery shopping this morning, that brings me to my peeve of the week. So 2 people live in this house, and that's it. Like we both have full-time jobs, so we don't always eat. We never eat 3 meals a day in this house, ever. $300 for 2 of us at the grocery store. Now, mind you, you guys have been hearing me bitch about my fridge. So this is my first like full shopping trip since the fridge went out. We lost everything, so I'd say probably about $100 of that, maybe $75 of that was just replenishing like condiments and you know what I mean, right. Like all the stuff that you don't have to buy every time you grocery shop. We had to buy everything because we didn't have anything in there. But yep, it was $400, but I'm gonna take $100 of that off because I had to buy like, I don't know, like different house shit. Like I bought like mouthwash and new toothbrushes and, you know.
Yeah, things you don't have to buy often.
Right. So I didn't even count those dollars. Like that $300 was just on food. Mm-hmm. But that's just crazy. I don't know.
Food is expensive, though.
It's so expensive.
That's why it's so hard for people to eat healthy, because you can get like a frozen burger at Meijer for $1.
You get a bag of them for $2 and feed your whole family.
But then like getting fruits and vegetables is so expensive. Mm-hmm. I don't understand it.
Yeah, this bag of grapes that we're munching on, that was like $7.
That's insane
for a snack,
and they're already like almost gone. So I don't know. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it sucks.
That's why it's hard for people. That's why obesity is so high in America. Like it's insane.
Well, because we're all on such strict time restraints and we're all on such strict budgets.
Yeah.
Sucks, dude.
Yeah.
So that's definitely my peeve of the week. But just bringing it back into Chelcee, I couldn't be more excited for you guys to hear this episode and for us to be able to share this with you and for her to be able to share her experiences directly to you. She just truly was a ray of light, very knowledgeable, very open. Any question that we had, she was like honored to answer. Like, it wasn't even that she was willing to answer. Like, you could just feel the compassion through her response to you, that she truly wanted to share her answer with you.
Right.
And just that presence, and just like whenever somebody takes time to be present with me, I always feel so honored. And that's why I keep saying it, because I truly am honored. I feel like she really truly did bring herself and like her heart and her presence here today.
I agree.
Yeah, I couldn't be more honored. So we hope you guys enjoyed your mini-sode on Monday, the full moon night, and we thank you for tuning in with us.
Yes. Thank you guys so much.
Chelcee was an absolute joy, and we know that you guys will enjoy this episode as much as we did. So we hope this episode finds you well. Enjoy, guys. What up, y'all? It's episode 15. Woohoo. So we hope that you guys enjoyed our full moon mini-sode brought to you by our lovely guest this evening, Miss Chelcee Etchison. Say hello, Chelcee.
Hi, everybody.
So Chelcee is our guest this week, and Chelcee is a wild woman, a wanderess. She has a travel blog, which we're definitely going to talk to you guys about. She's just a very spiritual being, very in touch with nature, and in touch with, and I would go as far as to say, like, at peace with who she is as a person. And I think that is the goal for all of us, to just find peace with who we are as a person. So we're more than honored to have you with us today, Chelcee.
Yes.
So for those of you that don't know, would you please introduce yourself? Who is Chelcee Etchison?
All right. Well, I'm Chelcee Etchison. I'm a 25-year-old Libra. I'm a server by night, cultural anthropologist by degree. I'm a travel blogger by the name of Wild Woman Wanderlust. And really, I'm just a moon-worshipping, nature-loving pagan from Southeast Michigan.
So there's
awesome.
There's so many things there. Like, I don't even know where to start. So I think your latest passion, aside from traveling, which is, of course, I would say your greatest passion.
Definitely.
Well, actually, you know what? I'm not sure, but somehow you managed to merge the two. So your latest passion, I would say, is definitely your blog.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did that come to be? How does one decide to start a blog? What's your backstory on that?
So yeah, I really started writing as a kid, and then when I started traveling, I would really enjoy sharing my travels through picture and writing a nice description with it on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. And people would always comment and say, you need to write a blog. And I had read fellow travel blogs before. I follow all kinds of travel accounts on social media. And I was really just like, you know what? I need to just buckle down and do it. So it really just took a lot of procrastination. And I'm kind of sad that it took me this long to even finally, put the pen to paper, or the fingers to keyboard, rather. So yeah, I started it a couple months ago. My first post was kind of just a general about me, what to expect in the blog. And then so far I've just written about my time at Machu Picchu and hiking and climbing the infamous Huayna Picchu and the Stairs of Death. And then I just last week posted an article about backpacking Isle Royale, which is Michigan's only national park up in the UP. So I'm still just starting out, finding my way. But really it just started with, once I started traveling, I found that I wanted to share that with people. There are a lot of people who aren't able to go places that I go for a multitude of different reasons. And some people might not even have a desire, which is totally cool too. But perhaps they just want a glimpse of what it's like there, what it is like to immerse yourself in a culture, what it's like to find yourself lost on a trail in the backcountry somewhere, and So yeah, I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Yeah.
Kind of like
No,
you
I
guys
love
are
that.
sharing your
Yeah.
passion and your interest with people via this podcast.
No, yeah, for sure. I think that even for people that do say have the means like to travel, or those that don't know that they have the want to travel, like, I don't know, it makes you want to go to those places, because she has some pretty epic Instagram
Yeah, when I
posts.
see like a new picture, I'm like, oh my god.
Yep. Because sometimes like I'll scroll through Instagram when I'm driving, guilty, but like I'll like I'll like scroll past one of yours and I'm like, oh, I have to go back and check that out later.
Yeah.
It's like, you need a minute, but it's the best minute that you'll spend of the day, because you can just feel the love. Like, you can feel the passion in your writing. And I think that that's what's truly amazing about you starting a blog and sharing that with people. So I hope that it does give you the fulfillment that you hope for, because I truly do feel like that's exactly what it's giving to others. And I think that when you write those words down, like, you can truly feel your passion. And I think that's really beautiful.
Well, thank you.
So.
That's like the ultimate compliment. And I think that like what I really want to do with this travel blog more, there are tons of travel blogs out there, and a lot of times for my travels I look to other travel bloggers for how-tos. How do you even plan a trip, a 2-month backpacking trip? How do you do these things? So it's cool. I want to provide that for people, but more so maybe it's a little selfish, but my travel blog is more about documenting my inward spiritual journey through external travel. So I'm seeking to share my worldly wanderings and how they spiritually transform my life. And I think that another really important aspect of this, which we can kind of touch on a little bit later as well, but one of women's traditional roles in society and in culture was being a storyteller. So we were the keepers of cultures traditionally. Story has always been a very potent medicine, that someone's words and someone's story can have really powerful healing energy to it. So traditionally women would gather in circle, in sweat lodges, in red tents, and women are still communing and doing these things. Sharing sacred songs, all kinds of things like that really just help solidify the divine feminine and, who we are in the world. And I think that my travel blog for me is part of my role as wanting to carry on that tradition of being a woman storyteller, too.
Absolutely. Like, I'm like dialing back to, like, there's so many influential women that would just tell stories. Like you always see in like every like kid movie or whichever, like there's always like an elderly female that's gonna tell stories and keep their traditions alive. And I never, I guess, thought that far ahead that like that is a role that you should fill.
Well, you guys are doing it here right now, so
I'm so enlightened right now.
I know.
Wow. Okay. So mind blown. I don't even know where to go from that. So with part of traveling, we just talked about the divine feminine. So for someone listening that is a lot greener than you on the topic, what would you say the divine feminine is?
So I think that it's kind of a hard thing to define, honestly, and I don't think that there's any definitive definition, and I think that it slightly differs from woman to woman what that means to you. The divine feminine is really just a woman comfortable in her own skin and who wants to empower other women to feel the same, who wants to encourage them on their journey and to offer advice and to be a companion along the way. I think that the divine feminine and the wild woman archetype kind of go hand in hand in this sense. So I think that it's more of an intuitive feeling, and it is the intrinsic nature of women. So it's a primordial state of being in which a woman embraces her unapologetic nature. And I think that for a lot of women who might not even be aware that they encompass the divine feminine, but there are things that might happen in a woman's life where she feels those fleeting moments. So a lot of women talk about when they get pregnant, this primal energy that radiates from them that they kind of didn't even know was there all along, but they can just feel her brewing, and what that means to each woman is different. But yeah, in motherhood, pregnancy, and for me not being a mother, I find that I really can feel that energy in nature. Grounding myself, signs of great beauty can awaken that. It can trigger something in you that you just have this like primal feeling where you kind of just want to scream at the top of your lungs. Like I have this thing I do any mountain I climb, I just howl at the top of my lungs, and like I don't care if people are looking at me like, what is this woman doing? It's just something that it just comes from like the gut and just radiates outward, and it's just like you'll get goosebumps and your hair stands on end, and you just...
I'm getting chills just
Yeah.
hearing it.
Yeah,
I do too.
And it
It's
just...
happening right now.
Yeah. Like, ow! I mean, man, it is the full moon. But for real. So...
No, that's awesome. I love that.
And I think that, you know, also just a couple last little thing, again, it is hard to pinpoint what exactly is the divine feminine or a wild woman, but it is something, in essence, she's the female soul, but she's more. She is the source of the feminine, and all women are innately born with her. It spans across cultures, religions, politics, time, and she's been there since the beginning, and so I feel like a lot of times in our culture, we've only just forgotten her. And, you know, I'm not going to go into a whole spiel about the patriarchy, but, like, perhaps that has an aspect to it. But that's a whole other lecture. Sure. But, yeah, so that's what the divine feminine is to me. And I think that maybe some people might beg to differ, but...
No, I 100% agree. I think that in society, like, I'll further it a little bit. I feel like in today's society, we are taught to kind of suppress our divine feminine and be a little more masculine than our nature is wanting us to be. So I think that that's something definitely in my like Saturn's return, that's definitely one thing that I have that I've come to terms with, is that I am a way more feminine being than I've ever allowed myself to be. So embracing that and finding my own way with that has been really, really cool. And it's been very healthy for mine and Nick's relationship. So like I was telling you before we're on air, he is a very masculine. Like he is a Scorpio to a T.
Yeah.
So just very fiery, very passionate one way or the other. Very masculine. So me being more feminine has really like it's been like life-changing in our relationship. It's really cool. So
yeah, it's beautiful to see how relationships, that balance of the yin and the yang, and you know what both of you bring to the table, and how together you coexist as like this complete being. Not that you're not complete on your own, because I think that's not true either. I think that we're all complete on our own, and we just find people who make us better, bring out the best in us, help us to really harness who we are as a woman, as a man, as a person.
All right, so do you want to dig into relationships a little bit?
Sure, I would love to.
Yeah, so how long have you been with Dev?
Devin and I have been together 3 years now. Yep, 3 amazing years. He's like my longest real relationship.
Yeah.
So.
And I feel like the bond that you guys have is truly special. Just from the outside looking in, is just the vibe that I get.
Oh, thank you.
And I feel like you're pretty vocal about feeling that you found someone that kind of feeds your soul. So could you go a little bit on like the affirmation of that, and what would appease one's soul? Like, how do you kind of know?
I think that sometimes you don't even know. When I first met Dev, I think it was a kind of a too good to be true. Like, he's not really this perfect. Not that any human being is perfect, but I was just like, he's so compassionate. He's so handsome. He worships the ground I walk on. Okay, where's the catch type of thing?
Right.
And I had been through, you know, my fair share of shitty relationships and things that happened to me and who I was, you know, as a woman growing up and through the phases I went through. Wasn't always the healthiest. So really I was coming out of a time where I had really devoted a lot of time and energy in working on myself and processing through some of those the old baggage I'd carry, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I met Devin through one of my girlfriends, and he just happened to come over there one night. I wasn't even planning on it. I had my hair up in a messy bun, no bra, not even that I wear a bra usually anyway, but like big t-shirt and some comfy shorts. And she's like, you know, I feel like you and Dev would really click. He's gonna come over. He's like gonna drop some weed off to us. And I was like, okay, cool. So like he comes over, and I'm just instantly like, this guy's a total babe. Why didn't I like even wash my face? What's going on? And he just, you know, sent me this really long message the next day and was just like, your energy was out of this world. Can I please take you on a date sometime?
Oh my God.
I was just like, sure. And
adorable.
literally our first date, it was signed, sealed, delivered. Like, we've been inseparable since.
Wow.
So it's really amazing. But I feel like how you're talking about that, feeding your soul, I am a very yin energy. So I'm very, you know, the darkness, and I enjoy that. Not dark, bad things, but, you know, like, I don't know, I feel more empathic. I feel more connected to the darkness than I do the light. And he is just like this beaming ray of sunshine. And, you know, he's very energetic and light and airy. So I needed that in my life. I needed somebody to help bring out that side of me, because that was something that I was lacking in life. And I think perhaps, I mean, you would kind of have to pick his brain, but I think that maybe the opposite was true for him, and he needed a little more yin in his life. So it's been really great watching us blossom and really balance and create this soul bond. And it's funny because he's a Libra too, so we're both
wow.
He's like on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio, but I definitely think he's more Libra. So it's funny because when in a lot of reading I've done, a lot of people are like one of the only two signs that can actually be with a person of the same sign as a Libra, and it's because you're the scales. Like usually you have one person on this end of the spectrum and another here, and then you find that balance between them. So I think I found the other side to my scale, as corny as that might sound.
No, that's awesome.
No, it just made me so happy.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
I'm like cheesing the whole time.
I know, me too.
Sorry, we're just staring at you.
I know, it's cool.
No, that makes me just, I hope that whomever is listening to this, like, I hope that you could feel her passion just like we could, because we're both just sitting here with just the biggest smiles on our faces.
Yeah.
She is just radiating passion for Devin right now, and I think it's really beautiful to know that love like that exists and it's out there. So
Okay, you guys are gonna make me cry. It's the full moon. I'm emotional.
embrace it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we can steer away from relationships for a little bit for your tear duct's sakes. We can lighten it up a little bit for you. Let's talk about like, so we talked a little bit about traveling, and your traveling blog, but we haven't even touched base with your actual traveling.
I'm super interested in that.
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple of places that you've been. Where is your, we'll start with like a smaller, where's your favorite place in Michigan that you've ever been to?
I think that truthfully my favorite place is Isle Royale. It was like no other. I love Michigan. I love our shorelines. I think we live in hands down one of, if not one of the most beautiful states. We don't have mountains, but our Great Lakes you can't find that anywhere else in the world. It really is a magical landscape that we get to appreciate. So I think it's hard to kind of choose one favorite place. But I really liked Isle Royale. It was just so secluded in that pristine wilderness right on Lake Superior, the largest freshwater lake in the world. So that was kind of cool. And the remoteness of it, it was almost like this forbidden land. So it was also cool just really immersing myself in the backcountry and challenging myself in that sense of carrying that 35-pound backpack for multiple days.
Yeah, because you're a small human. Chelcee is just a small framed, like, petite woman. And these packs are every bit as big big as her.
Definitely. So that, I think, had an interesting component. But yeah, I really loved Isle Royale. And I think that a very close second is just Lake Michigan. I really love Lake Michigan, whether it's, you know, Nordhaus Dunes, Ludington. I mean, all that whole west coast of our state, there's something very ethereal about it. That I feel like I've had some of my most spiritually uplifting and grounding moments on our lake, none other than Lake Michigan. So it's kind of cool. Those are probably.
That is amazingly cool. So, speaking of spiritual moments, so, like, have you always been spiritual, or did you have, like, a download? Was there, like, an awakening moment? Like, how does one come to be so just spiritual and at ease with oneself?
Oh, well, that's a tough question. No, I have definitely not always been spiritual. I didn't come from a very religious family. I had never been to church a day in my life. My parents are Christian. They always told me, like, there's a God, there's Jesus. The Protestant work ethic was very strong in my household, but it was never, okay, on Sundays we go to church. So I never grew up with this structured religious or spiritual background. So I think that was actually kind of a blessing for me because I found it on my own. It wasn't something that was given to me and passed down, which would have been beautiful as well to carry on those traditions, but instead it was kind of just trial and error almost. So it was kind of at one of those points where I was into bad things, hanging with the wrong crowd, doing not the best things, not being the best version of myself, getting out of a really toxic and destructive relationship. And I applied for this field school scholarship through my university, and I got it. So I applied to this field school in Mexico. And I was studying the Maya fertility and moon goddess Ixchel. So I was kind of just, side note, researching varying levels of symbolism and belief on the island across different populations concerning this goddess, and seeing does she still play a role in their culture? Is it more just like a myth that they tell the tourists? So after working so much with the communities on the island, spending a lot of time at the ruins, talking to the Maya, talking to people there, I just kept feeling this energy. I can't even put a pen to, or a name to it necessarily. And so one night, my professor, he is actually a witch, and we were going to the temple because we wanted to break in and see if there was any full moon circles going on, because supposedly the pagans on the island would have this full moon circle. So Todd's like, I'll totally break in with you. Like, it's okay. We'll escape Mexican jail together. I'm like, coolest professor ever? Absolutely. So we go in and nobody was doing anything. And he's like, you know what? I brought some crystals and sage. We'll do our own ritual. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't really know anything about this. What do I do? And he's like, just stand there. So these were like ruins that weren't roped off. They're very small, so you could just kind of sit on them. So he's like, just sit there and meditate. And he just cleansed the area with sage and was just like, I don't even know what he was necessarily doing, because I was just so up in my own head. And it's right where we were at. The ruins are right on a peninsula on the south end of the island. So there's waves crashing all on the rocks below you. And that's really like, it's loud there, but just completely immersed in nature. And I just sat there meditating, and this feeling came over me. For the first time in my life, I felt something greater than myself. I felt it wasn't an out-of-body experience, but it was some magic. There was something magical happening. And, you know, I kind of was like, oh, am I just up in my own head here? And I was like, no, give me a sign. I was like, make the wind blow this way if you're here, Ishel. And like all these things were happening. I'm like, no, that's too much of a chance. And I did like 3 different things. I was like, give me a sign. And every single time it happened. And I mean, that could have just been serendip. It could have just been anything. But really, I felt that she was there for me. And I felt like I was called to that island because actually I wasn't just meant to research her. I was meant to find her because she's my goddess. And ever since that time on the island, which was back in 2014, I've been very devoted to the working with the lunar cycles. And basically, Ishel is the moon personified to me. So she's just a figurehead for worshiping the nature in a sense. But she's also a deity that controls her own aspects as well, I guess, like women's arts and storytelling and things like that. So I try to channel that energy. So that's really how I found myself spiritually, and it really blossomed after that.
That's
Wow.
amazing. Yeah. So
That is
okay.
awesome.
So you were where in Mexico?
Isla Mujeres, so it's known as the Island of Women. It's a small island right off the coast of Cancun.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I think that it's very cool that you happen to be at the Island of Women.
Yeah, I know.
And then, I like
Right?
it's weird. It's I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I feel like a piece of her like
Mhm.
has to be like within you.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really cool. So so how does one get into a school abroad?
Well, I found this through my university. So I graduated from the University of Michigan, Dearborn, and the anthropology faculty there are very helpful, and it's a smaller school, so you have really close relationships with some of your professors who are your mentors and who you go to. You know, they see where your passions lie based on just what you write about, what you choose to talk about,
Right.
the questions you ask in their class, whatever. And so I had a different, this is what makes it seem like even more that it was all meant to be. I had a different field school picked out that was actually in Guatemala, and I applied to it. I got a scholarship through my school, and basically there was a woman named Beth Bessler, and she is an alum from the school, and she donates money each year for kids. She studied abroad when she was younger, so she donates money to the anthropology department that they can allocate an award to different students who apply for it.
Oh, wow.
So it was really just entailed writing a little paper and telling them why I feel like I deserve to go and what I'm trying to do. And they were like, absolutely, you need to do this. So anyway, so in the Guatemala field school, I got accepted. And a couple weeks later, they messaged me and they said, we actually don't have the funds to run the program, so unfortunately we're gonna have to cancel. And here I had this scholarship, and I was like, great, the cherry on top, everything in my life's falling apart, I'm not even going to my field school. And the faculty at U of M were just like, absolutely not, we're finding you a new field school. And so they were
Wow.
sending me all kinds of different ones, and the Isla Mujeres one just really stood out to me, and I'm happy. I see now why it did, you know. So
Yeah.
sometimes we don't know. So I spent 6 weeks there.
Talk
It was
about
really cool.
serendipitous.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I love to use that word. It's one of my favorite words. I feel like I probably use it too much, but
No.
it's very applicable.
I love when I just have a good big word that I
Yeah, it makes
Throw
me sound
around.
smart too.
but like I don't know, they feel good coming out.
Mhm.
So
Rolls
whatever.
off the tongue.
It's
Now,
very
did they take care of
serendipitous.
like your housing and stuff as well?
Yeah, so like included in the cost of the field school was lodging. So I got a private room. It was at now it's a hostel, but it was a hotel at the time. It was lodging. The classwork was included. Actually, it was really cool. And part of what helped me get involved in traveling and stuff was we had a nice amount of time to allocate outside of schoolwork. So part of the first week on the island, we got certified to be scuba divers. So that was part of our coursework. That was included in the cost of tuition. So it was really cool because the island runs a lot on, it's ecotourism. So their economy on the island is mostly run from tourists. And a lot of that, it's one of the most premier diving destinations in the world. There's an underground archaeological museum there. There's whale sharks there. So, like, a lot of people come to that island for those reasons. So our professor thought that it was important for us to immerse ourselves as anthropologists in what it is that drives the island's economy. So it was cool because nobody's going to be like, oh, darn, I got to go diving today. Like, they're like,
Right.
cool, I get to go diving too.
Yeah.
So part of that was, becoming a certified diver. We also got to swim with whale sharks, which was a wild experience. They're as big as school buses, and you're in the middle of the Caribbean. And it's kind of terrifying, but really cool. So that, and then also we got to go to the mainland and visit Chichen Itza, which was my first wonder of the world. So as anthropologists, he's like, well, let's go to the heart of like where the anthropologists and
Right.
archaeologists thrive.
Wow.
So it was cool to see that as well.
Yeah.
That's
For someone
awesome.
that doesn't know, what is an anthropologist? Just to clear that up.
Yeah, so an anthropologist is one who studies culture. There are several branches of anthropology. So you have like linguistic, you have physical, you have archaeology. So a lot of people hear the word anthropologist and they think, oh, cool, you dig up bones. And I always like to word it, I like to study the people that are still living. So you have your archaeologists who study past culture, and maybe they study artifacts as well. And through that, we can learn about ancient society and ancient culture and how things worked then. But yeah, so like I like to study, my area of expertise is really indigenous religious beliefs. So that's kind of, I don't know why, like talking about spirituality, I guess I've kind of always felt a call to it.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of found it through that.
So we did talk about like your favorite place in Michigan, but where is like your favorite place ever that you've traveled?
Yeah, so that's another really tough question.
I know you've been like everywhere, so many places.
I love the quote. I haven't been everywhere, but it's on my list.
Right.
Like, every time I take one thing off my bucket list, I end up putting 7 things on. It's like, okay, this is never going to get done, but whatever. So I would probably have to say my favorite place ever was Peru, honestly. It's hard to pinpoint one exact location in that beautiful country, because we did get to spend 2 months backpacking around, and we saw
that's awesome.
a nice portion of it.
So crazy. And you and
My boyfriend,
Yeah,
Devin.
you and Devin.
Wow.
Okay.
And I actually am glad you like said that, because I saw that you did like a watermelon bath.
Oh, yeah.
And I
fruit
wanted
bath.
to ask you how that was, because it looked cool.
Yeah, so it was actually really refreshing.
Yeah.
So that was a fruit bath that we would do. So I, towards the end of our trip, we went to the Amazon rainforest, and we did an ayahuasca retreat. And part of the cleansing ceremony before ceremony would be to give ourselves like a flower essence bath. And then we did a mud bath one day, and then we had our fruit essence bath. So they took local fruits that our shaman and his helpers collected from their land, kind of mushed it up, essentially, put some water in with it, and we would sit there, and one of his apprentices would dump the water over us, and it was believed that those fruits and flowers encompass certain healing properties, and by bathing yourself in it, it cleanses you, opens you up to receiving the plant's guidance and medicine. Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's
it was
amazing.
really cool.
So you had said, and God, I can never say this word correctly, so you know it's coming, but the Ayahuasca.
Oh, yeah.
Not even wanna-
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No
Sorry.
worries.
I didn't even want to try, but there was no other way. I had to
Yeah.
sacrifice myself. But anyways, so what does a ritual with that? Like, how was that experience? Because I've heard some crazy things.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely like one of the most intense experiences of my entire life. Sometimes quite often traumatic and not necessarily enjoyable in the moment, which I find is kind of a theme when working with the medicine. And a lot of times, so ayahuasca is an entheogen, which an entheogen is more commonly known as a hallucinogen, something that opens you up to other energies, other dimensions, other mental processes. So I had actually researched ayahuasca quite extensively anthropologically, and that was what I focused a lot of my research on in school. So it had always been a bucket list calling for me to go and do an ayahuasca ceremony. So finally, Dev and I made our way down to, well, I kind of already had an idea that I was going to Peru when Devin and I got together, and his exact words were, well, why should you have all the fun? I want to come. I said, I would love for you to come. Like, come on. So, and he had read about it, researched it, and felt a calling as well. But it's kind of one of those things. I mean, your neighborhood drug dealer doesn't have ayahuasca. It's something that's you come to with great respect, and you come to understanding what you're getting yourself into, kind of thing. Because like I said, it's not necessarily enjoyable. So ayahuasca is essentially DMT. So it is a brew that you drink that they make from a vine and chacruna leaves, which are both found in the Amazon rainforest. They make a tea out of it, and it is the nastiest tasting thing you will ever taste in your entire life. It is so bitter, thick, and chunky, and tastes like a decomposing body in pond water. Truthfully, is exactly how I would peg the taste of it. If that's grotesque, I'm sorry, guys. But, so drinking it alone is enough to make one want to vomit. Mm-hmm. But it's a purgative, so it causes you to vomit and have to poop. But also energetically purging, so you can process through traumas. There has been a lot of research for people, veterans with PTSD, mm-hmm. People with depression turning to ayahuasca. We're talking like medication-resistant forms of these disorders, for lack of a better word. So maybe people who didn't find help through modern medicine, and it's kind of like, okay, this is my last resort, type of thing. So a lot of people will go down to the jungle to work with the shaman and work with the medicine. And for me, I went to the medicine because I have depression, and that's kind of something that I've dealt with for most of my life. I was on psychiatric drugs for years, and then kind of came off of them, and kind of just looking for more natural remedies. And again, I had been researching it for so long, it had just been something calling for me. So I went and did it. And after talking with my shaman, I was on birth control at the time, and you have to give them an extensive medical history because it is, tough on your body. So they want to make sure you don't have any heart conditions, that this medicine isn't going to interact with any other medications you could be taking. And so when I told him I was on birth control, he was like, well, can you stop taking it for the week you're here? And I was like, well, I kind of take it because I have menstrual issues that I've had since I started my period at 11 years old. So I was like, I can't really stop taking it. And he was like, well, then, yes, you should stop taking it. You're here for healing, aren't you? And I was like, okay, well, I didn't know I was going to do all this. Like, I want to get my mind right. Like, okay, apparently we're doing that. And he's like, I think that you should. And he said, but I mean, the ultimate decision is up to you. And, I meditated on it, and I said, let's do this. So for me, my experience with ayahuasca was a lot to do with the divine feminine, honestly, and my cycle, and learning how to understand my body and how to honor that cycle and channel its energy, and really just healing my womb space so that it can be an incubator for giving life, not just to a human, but our womb as women gives birth to a lot of things. Our creativity is believed to be held in our womb. So really just opening that space and rejuvenating it so that I can birth more amazing things into life. So that was my experience with it. And I think that once you do ayahuasca, it is something that stays with you for the rest of your life. So the lessons that you learned from the medicine, oftentimes you get she sends you reminders. It's something that, I mean, I probably sound crazy talking about, but like just subtle hints, you know, you'll be trailing off and like losing yourself and maybe not paying as much attention to your body, and then something will happen and you just smile and you're like, I know, that's her reminding me, get back on track, remember the lessons you learned, remember these, you know, remember the medicine, remember your healing. And so yeah, it's something that sticks with you, and it's a beautiful experience. I highly recommend it to anybody who's up for it, but I think that it's not something that you go into like, yeah, I'm trying to try the strongest hallucinogen known to man. Like, it's, okay, I've got some deep soul work I need to do here. Let's buckle down and do it type of thing.
No, I think that's crazy. So it's not something that one would go to for a good time.
Yeah,
it truly
right.
is a medicine. So wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that was probably like one of my favorite parts of Peru, like going back to where's my favorite place in the world. Like Peru in general, the culture there is so thriving, and the people there are so welcoming and generous to share their culture and to share their knowledge that they possess, that it was really just a gift to be there and experience it. And it's something that like will always be like it was my number one bucket list trip for years. So to say like at 25 years old I've already done it, like I was pretty proud of myself. When we got on that plane, I was like, it's happening. I've only been loosely planning it for years type of thing, but yeah.
So I just wanted to pick your brain about crystals. So what is your favorite crystal? Like, what crystals would you recommend to use, say like for a full moon experience? What crystals would align with certain chakras? I know I threw a lot at you, so like, what's your favorite crystal?
Yeah, so Moonstone is probably my favorite crystal. I'm sure people probably hear that name and are like, wow, this girl's like obsessed with the moon. Yes, I am.
Own it.
But so Moonstone's my favorite crystal. For those of you who don't know, it is a white stone. Rainbow Moonstone's my favorite. It comes in different colors, but it's a white stone. And upon first glance, you might just say, oh, yeah, that's a cool white rock you got over there. But when you really see it in the light, you can see flashes of color and flashes of beauty that occur naturally in this stone. And I think that it really... Sorry.
No, you're
okay.
No apologies necessary
Okay.
from the person who didn't hit record the first time.
Okay. I think that it really just mirrors human life. I mean, on the outside, we just think it's a white rock, but if you really take the time to look deeper, you see those flashes of beauty, and we're all kind of like that. On the outside surface, someone might just pass you by in the street and not think anything of you, but if you really got to know you and what it is that makes your soul tick, you really see those flashes of natural charm and elusiveness, just like these crystals. So Rainbow Moonstone is a good stone for women. It is known for its fertility powers, but it doesn't just have to be used for that. I definitely don't use it for those purposes. But for any women who might be, I do know some women who I've gifted Moonstone to, whether they were new mothers, just found out they were pregnant, or I've had friends who had been trying to conceive, and I did a little magic for them and kind of found them some Moonstone because I think that it has some really beneficial powers for women's health in general. So it's also really good for honoring and incorporating your cycle into your life as a woman. So I use mine a lot when I'm menstruating and I have bad cramps. This has really great powers for helping to alleviate some of that tension that we feel at that time of the month. So I will generally place the crystal on my sacral chakra, which is the chakra right below your belly button. Its color is orange. It's known for its connection to your sexuality. and kind of your primal innate desires. So yeah, I think that it's really good for helping you to connect with that. It's a very intuitive stone, and it's basically the divine feminine incarnate, so I love working with it.
I love that. And of course, you would have Moonstone.
Yeah.
So with it being called Moonstone, this may be a silly question, but would you have your Moonstone be a part of your moon ritual?
Absolutely. So Moonstone's actually usually one of the centerpieces on my altar. I have several pieces of it. This is kind of just my carry-around one, but I have a really nice sphere that Devin got me for my birthday last year. Or maybe it was Christmas. Well, he got it for me. It was really nice. It's my favorite. It has really nice flash. So I'll, like, set up my altar for that and usually put that at the center. Moonstone is a great stone for that. I always like to incorporate some selenite. Selenite has very good cleansing properties as well. It's one of the only stones that doesn't need to be cleansed either through water or the full moon or earth or however people energetically cleanse their stones, because it is self-cleansing, and it can actually cleanse your other crystals. So if you have selenite around, you can put your crystals on top of it or around it, and it cleanses those crystals as well. So selenite is a really good one. And of course, selene, it connects to the moon. I think black tourmaline is one of my other favorites. Black tourmaline
that's one of my favorites too.
It has a good grounding energy, helps you when you're feeling flighty, helps you get that connected energy going. It is related to your root chakra, which is at the base of your spine. Its color is red. Very, again, with the primal desires for the root chakra. And so other crystals I use, there's a crystal that's a little bit harder to find that was one I had been on the search for a while. I'm a bit of a crystal connoisseur. I actually happened to find it when I was in San Diego for my best friend's wedding. It's cacoxanite. So it's a orangish mineral deposit that grows in different types of quartz. So I have a piece of amethyst that has cacoxanite in it, and that is known to amplify energies when working with lunar cycles in ritual or ceremony. So I use that. Clear quartz, a basic staple to anybody who's starting their crystal collection or likes crystals or is looking to feel the energy of them. Clear quartz is a really great place to start. It's an amplifier, so you can amplify your manifestations or intentions or thoughts with this crystal. So those are some of my faves to use. I also my other probably favorite go-to, I like carnelian a lot, which is again for the sacral chakra. It's really good for depression. So I found I always actually wear it on my wrist. It helps to alleviate the symptoms as well as prevent them from coming on. So I like working with carnelian a lot. And for anybody who might be trying to work past a sexual trauma or to enhance the sexuality in their life or self-love, carnelian is good for that as well.
Good to know.
Yeah, everybody could use a little of that. Rose quartz is good for that too, if we're on the subject.
So speaking of you wearing those on your wrist, so I mean, it's silly for me to ask you because I'm looking at you, but do you carry crystals / wear crystals on the regular?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I have I wear a lot of moonstone. I actually I love rings a lot. So opal is my birthstone, October, Libra. So I wear opal. I have a turquoise ring that was my mom's when she was a girl, so that's really precious to me. But yeah, I wear a lot of the crystal bracelets. So my ones I wear every day are the rainbow moonstone, carnelian. I have lava beads, which are nice. They're porous, so if you have essential oils, you can. Yeah, a lot of people that's been pretty popular lately. So I like that. And then labradorite, I really love labradorite, again with the play on the color on that, the magic really just brings it out. And then I might be pronouncing this wrong, truthfully I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but charoite, charoite, not exactly sure. But yeah, I got it when I was in Arizona. It's good for your crown chakra. It's a purple stone.
So, you mentioned essential oils.
Mm-hmm.
What are your faves? So, well, actually, before we started tonight, you had placed some on your forehead.
Yeah.
Your third eye.
Yep, third eye chakra.
So, what did you place on it and why?
So this is actually, I was getting this kit called Goddess Provisions, and it's one of those monthly kits you sign up for. And there's different themes each month. So they had one that was a moon goddess theme. So of course I was like, oh, I'm getting that.
Yeah.
That's got my name all over it. So one of the things that was in it was this. It's anointing oil. So anointing oils are oils that are safe enough to put directly onto your skin. And it is you anoint basically your third eye chakra, which is located in this, in between your two eyes and on your forehead. It really just imbues the magical properties of the plants that are in the oil, the essential oil blend. This one I think is a jasmine blend, but it's moon goddess. Yeah, jasmine blend. It's moon goddess. It's by Kate's Magic. So they're good quality material, and I just like to kind of, when I'm getting ready before ritual or ceremony or really just trying to center my energy on something, I like to take a moment to ground into myself and anoint myself and to ask for the property, to call on my moon goddess, and to also to call on the properties of the plant medicines to help me to get my point across. And I wanted to really make this something special for you guys, so I kind of wanted to channel that energy. I know we were talking a lot about spirituality, so I find myself often doing little things like this, which almost bring ritual into your daily life without having to sit down and say, I'm allocating time for a ritual, making your...
Right, because as someone that, I know my own brain, if I get too wrapped up in every little detail, then all of a sudden an hour's passed and I haven't moved towards doing that.
Absolutely.
So to just take, a second and just be like, all right, I'm not thinking about it. You heard me earlier, I was like, all right, done thinking about it. Let's go. Because, and I think that is kind of it's like a reset. That's why I love the moon, is because it's quarterly times throughout the month. Even if you're not that spiritual of a being, it's still setting aside times for yourself throughout the month to just reset, refocus, and make sure you're on the right path, the path that you want to be on.
Absolutely.
So you've mentioned a lot a moon goddess. We talked about your moon goddess that you would came acquainted with in Mexico. So what is a moon goddess, if you were to put it in a term?
So I think that there are moon goddesses that exist across cultures for millennia. Maybe not in Christianity, but when you have these polytheistic religions or spiritual practices where they would personify nature in a sense. So we have sun gods, we have moon goddesses, we have gods of harvest, we have water gods, thunder gods, Thor. I mean, in older cultures and pagan traditions, this was a common theme. So my moon goddess, Ixchel, is the moon goddess of the Maya people. There are other moon goddesses in other cultures by a plethora of different names. And I think that while their root is all the same in that they are the moon personified, they help put a face to an object and make it more personable for the person to relate to almost. But at their core, they're all the same. You can call it Ixchel, whatever you want to call it, other names, but what you're really honoring is the moon. So a moon goddess is just the moon in a sense. But so it helps us to imbue those qualities of the moon, such as the watery mysticism, the feminine aspect of it. Like you were talking about the cycles, I think that is something that's really important. And as women, our cycles are very in sync with the moon. So a woman's cycle typically lasts 29 days. A lunar cycle is typically 29 days. Chance? I don't think so. I think that there's a higher connection to that. You know, there's insight that can be gained from that. So there's a book called Red Moon by Miranda Gray that goes into big detail about this, the red and white moon cycles. So there are 4 phases of a cycle for women. They could be thought of as distinct seasons. So you have your first phase, which is the follicular phase, which is your first phase after menstruation. So this is known as the inner spring. So you're feeling yourself awakening, coming back to life. You're feeling like a human again, you know, like, oh, okay, I'm not so hormonal and crazy anymore. I am a normal, right. You know, a lot of us might be able to relate to that. The second phase is the ovulatory phase. A lot of women do already know about that. That's when you're ovulating. So that's your inner summer. You're that's the only time you're fertile in your cycle, which typically lasts for about 3 days max. Typically, it's just a 24-hour period. And traditionally, if we're going by the white moon cycle, women would be ovulating during the full moon. So that's the relation to that. Our third phase is the luteal phase, which is our inner fall. So we're kind of preparing to shed, just like we're doing right now in nature. And then the last phase is the menstrual cycle, which is the inner winter, which is was typical if you're in the white moon cycle to be bleeding on a new moon. So for the white moon cycle, this is a mirror for the fertility of the earth. So how I just explained those, we see, oh, okay, that makes sense. Ovulatory in summer, everything is so ripe and, like, you know, coming into blossom, ready to give birth to these things, you know. And then we have our menstrual cycle where things are kind of dying off. We're shedding that lining, we're shedding the leaves, we're, you know, so that is known as the good mother phase. And then you have a red moon cycle, which is actually the opposite of that. So a woman would be ovulating during a new moon and menstruating on a full moon. So this was known as the wise women's cycle. This was known for medicine women and magic makers to be on that type of cycle. So I think as women, we notice, especially if you necessarily aren't on hormonal birth control, I think that maybe it's a little bit easier to recognize your cycle. But you'll see that shifts over time in your life. Sometimes you'll be on the white moon cycle. Sometimes you'll be on the red. Sometimes you'll be somewhere in between. Like, there's no right way. But it's just really interesting as you were talking about the cycles and how they coincide for everybody, but especially as women.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. So I have an app. So weird that we're talking about this right now. I have an app on my phone just because I listened to a podcast of the woman who made said app, and she talked about the different phases in your cycle, and it was so hard for me to remember like which came in which order until you just aligned them with the seasons. Yeah, because now I'm like, I'll never forget that ever. Because what comes after winter, spring, that like, oh, like you're coming back to life.
Absolutely.
Like, everything's great. And then when you're ovulating, you know, of course, like nature's going to be like, you're ovulating. Like, let's go.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
And that's like summer. Summer's a party. You know what I mean? And then like fall, like you start to calm down. You start to like get cozy and inward. And then bring, wow. So the app is called My Flow.
My Flow.
It's free. It's super dope. Yeah, here. It's super dope because it tells you like exactly when you enter each phase, like what types of foods you should eat, what types of exercises you should be doing, what type of like love life activities you should be doing, stuff like that. So it was really cool. I was listening to something about like health and fitness, and it was like you shouldn't be exercising the same throughout the month. And so then they had her on, and she was talking about like what different exercises you should do for each cycle, and it was so enlightening to me. And I'm even more in like that's like took that whole lesson to like a whole other level because now I can remember them.
Yeah. And so like I was saying, the Red Moon by Miranda Gray, another really good source of knowledge and empowerment if you're looking for this kind of information, there's someone I follow on Instagram. I think she also has a website. It's Woman Wellness, so WOMBEN WELLNESS. It's a woman who goes by the name of Usha, and she is extremely knowledgeable about this. And it's really cool because she blends the balance of the sacred and science. So she'll explain it to you scientifically and then how that relates spiritually. So she has that 2-part mind system going on. This woman is amazing. Such a wise woman. So if anybody's looking for other resources, a lot of what I just shared with you was knowledge I gained from her. So
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've seen you mention her in a couple of your posts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely, like, I remember seeing it now. So you are so just passionate about the femininity of it all, if that's even the correct term for it. Okay. You've been to a women's retreat?
I have.
So was that it was how long ago?
So that was in the beginning of June.
Okay, was that your first women's retreat?
It was.
And how was that experience?
It was great. So I actually found out about it. Devin, his sister, runs women's circles out in
As
Grand
one
Rapids.
soulmate would.
I know, right? Like, wow. He's
Get
a
out
great
of
catch, and
here.
his sister's even badass. So it's awesome. But her name is Jessica, and she runs retreats, she runs women's circles out in Grand Rapids. So if any women are interested, I can give that info as well. But anyway, so she was running this retreat, and she kept telling me, come on, you need to come. And I'm like, I'm so nervous. Like, I don't know any of these women besides you. Like, what are we going to be doing? I'm so scared to open up like that. And she's like, you've just got to come. So she convinced me, and it was so rewarding. So we went to Nordhaus Dunes, which is this beautiful hidden gem on Lake Michigan. So we backpacked. It was like basically a hike in 3 miles, and we set up camp for 3 nights. And really, it was just women getting together, and that includes everything. Like, we would just sit around cooking dinner, just talking about women's issues, the kids at home, your husbands, our menstrual cycles, weird things that happen when we have sex that we're supposed to be ashamed of. We even like delve deep to deal about like childhood traumas and losses and everything that incorporates. But what's really great about women's circles and women's retreats is that we're all there for the same reason. We're there to commune with our fellow women, and we are there to empower each other and not to judge, but to have that safe space and to hold space for other people. So yeah, women's circles and women's retreat. That retreat was just like was like a women's circle on steroids for a whole weekend of just surrounding yourself with women from all walks of life, all age groups, all belief systems, and just communing, cooking dinner together, storytelling, howling at the moon. I mean, skinny dipping, all kinds of stuff.
Amazing.
No, 100%. I feel like so much, unfortunately, in the world of womanhood, it's a competition, and it's looked at as, you can't compliment that person because that's makes you less than them.
Absolutely.
And it's so not true. So I think to just openly practice and seek out like-minded women that are going to empower versus tear down is just really special. All right, so with it just with October being upon us, everyone's kind of getting spooky.
Yeah.
And we did talk a little bit about you being pagan. So with that being said, do you have any types of feelings towards Halloween?
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely one of my favorite holidays. I love to get spooky. But really, I think that it plays on these fall energies that we kind of talked about in the mini episode about the equinox and us just entering into Libra. And I mean, I know Halloween falls in Scorpio, but really just playing on those signs. So my sorry. Okay. So Halloween is known as Samhain in the pagan tradition in the Wheel of the Year, which it looks like it should be pronounced Samhain. So I'm still learning how to pronounce all these. I'm not any pro, so if I'm mispronouncing anything and anybody's listening, like, hey, I'm just learning and trying my best here. Sometimes we don't have like spoken people to pass this down to us, so a lot of this information comes through reading and whatever.
Our listeners are especially conditioned to realizing that we're just trying to learn too.
Okay, cool. yeah. So Samhain, so also known as like All Hallows Eve. So the veil between the worlds is believed to be very thin at these times. So, or around Halloween rather, but this whole month in general. So it's easier to make a connection with an energy who is passed over. And so you might see extra paranormal activity in these times, or, find yourself missing loved ones more often, or having dreams of them, things like that. So I always like to build a little altar dedicated to my loved ones who have passed on. So I'll incorporate pictures, ashes, little things that remind me of them, or little knickknacks. Like my granny always had cool little knickknacks, so I'll put something from her on there, and pictures. I'll burn a candle for them. Last year, actually, I did a really cool ritual where I burnt I believe it was a red candle that was meant to signify like the fiery energy of the time, and a black candle. And I don't know what this is called. Like I know that there's like a whole discipline of people who read these types of things, of intuitive people, but you read the way that the candle wax melts, and it's supposed to like symbolize something, a higher purpose or whatever. So I let the two candles melt into this dish and kind of just interpreted the wax, and saw the cool colors of the enmeshing of the colors and the swirls, and kind of really just made me feel like it was all the energy that when we lose someone in this life, it is so hard and devastating, and it's something that every single one of us deals with, and every single one of us will go through, but it never seems to get easier. So it was just something to me that signified how even though they have passed on and might not be here with us anymore, their energy never dies, because according to the law of thermodynamics, once energy is created, it can't be destroyed. So how would their energy ever not exist just because their physical bodies died? So I feel like at this time, it's really a great time if you want to talk to any loved ones, or leave any ofrendas. I know that's a huge in Latin American culture, the Dia de los Muertos. Like that's, really, they have a beautiful way of honoring it. So I like to draw on traditions like that and kind of borrow and
No, I think that's amazing. As cheesy as it sounds, so they came out with the movie Coco.
Yes, I love that movie.
I know, it's such a cute movie.
But I was like, all right, so like Cubans do this too, right? So we can totally do this tradition because Nick's Cuban, so.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so of course we talked a lot about different rituals that you have practiced, but that's going to help you on more of a spiritual realm. But if we're talking strictly travel, and like physical realm, what are some tips that you could give someone in regards to traveling? I think the biggest tip could not the biggest tip, obviously that's going to be your call there, but inquiring minds would want to know how do you go about budgeting for like a 2-month long type of trip, because that obviously has to take an extensive amount of planning.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of a tough question, and I think that every traveler has their own way, their own method to the madness, essentially. For me, I did a lot of research online about how to budget for people with travel blogs, truthfully, are a main source of where you get knowledge on these types of things. So you can even Google something as simple as like planning a 2-month trip. Like our next trip is going to be Australia. So planning a 2-month backpacking trip to Australia. And like there'll be budget plans and like how to do it the cheapest. So for me, I found that the best way to save money while traveling is choosing where you stay and what you eat. And like, I mean, I budget most of my money to activities, adrenaline packed, diving or hiking. I mean, which hiking can be done for really cheap, but like, adventure sports and things like that. And I'll eat Chef Boyardee for 3 days or 4 days in a row, like to save some money.
Right.
Okay.
So for me, choosing where to stay. So we stay, when we're doing big trips like that, we often stay in hostels. So I had never heard of a hostel before except in the terrifying movie Hostel, which is the exact opposite of what you'll ever experience at probably 99.9% of hostels in the world. They're actually a really cool space to meet like-minded fellow travelers who are also broke and traveling on a budget but trying to see as much of this beautiful world as possible. So hostels, there's an app called Hostel World that has hostels listed all around the world that you can choose and stay from, and they rate them on things like cleanliness, security, amenities, location, and all kinds of things. You can read reviews. They tell what they offer, so you can choose from staying in like something dorm style where there's bunk beds and there could be anywhere from 4 to 10 beds in a room, or you could opt for a private room. In Peru, Devin and I mean, the 4 weeks we were doing like a Spanish language immersion program, but the rest of it we stayed in hostels and stayed in like private rooms, which in Latin America it's very cheap to travel. Like the US dollar is worth significantly more than most Latin American currencies. So our dollar goes a long way somewhere like there. Now, whereas in Australia, it's very similar, the currency exchange rate. So it's much more expensive. So traveling in Australia would essentially be the same as traveling here in the U.S. for that extended period of time with cost-wise. So looking at that, exchange rates. So Hostel World is a great option. I know I'm kind of hopping around here. Airbnb, I know you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Especially in the U.S. Hostels are not as big here. Maybe in cities like San Francisco, San Diego, in Colorado, they're more common. I don't know if we have any hostels here in Detroit, in Michigan. Like, it's not a common thing here. So I use Airbnb a lot when traveling in the U.S. You can find rooms. You could rent a room in a house or an apartment for like $40 a night. Or, I mean, it could go upward. You could rent an entire house. Say you got some friends together and you guys want to split the cost. There are so many different options there. You choose your location. You choose the city. You choose your dates. And a lot of times your hosts there are badass people who have so many great suggestions because they're the locals. They're going to tell you all the best hidden gems. Like, they're not going to send you to the same places where you're going to take 75 of the same, wait in line behind 75 people to take the same picture, which I'm guilty of a million times. So I'm not going to talk smack about it. But, so those are really, Airbnb and Hostel World are probably my two favorites as far as that goes. Looking into public transportation, in our city, that's something that's kind of lacking. So it's hard for us because we didn't grow up using public transportation. But traveling, a lot of other cities around the world have vast networks that are really easy to navigate if you only kind of get the feel for it, essentially. And you can talk to all kinds of people there about it. So we do that a lot. Greyhound buses, a lot of the buses are better than I feel like what we also have here in the U.S. They'll have seats that lay fully down into a bed, so a 20-hour bus ride isn't really that bad. You know, you have a bathroom that's essentially an airplane bathroom.
Right.
They'll serve dinner if it's an overnight. It's not horrible. The driving in Latin America is very windy. Slam on the brakes. You're flying all around. But, I mean, it's cool. You got to appreciate it. It's part of the experience. And I think
sure it's worth the sights that you see, definitely.
Along the way. And it's like, okay, if I'm going to pay $100 for that, or I could pay $500 and fly,
Right.
Well, I could spend that other $400 on diving for a weekend, or we could do a weekend excursion here.
Right.
So really just picking and choosing those kinds of things. Picking what are your must-see places or things that you have to do and planning around that. Saying, okay, we have pinpoints here, here, here. Let's connect them. How is the best to navigate between it? And again, just Googling it and getting lost in that network of you're on 75 pages later and you're like, okay, well, I officially know how to travel, like, because you've just read so much. It was kind of started like that for me, I think.
Very cool. Gosh, I get overwhelmed just thinking about planning a trip, I swear. So
I know it takes a lot for me to plan just like a camping trip for a weekend. But I feel like if you do enough research, it could be super, like, simple. I mean, financially, it might, I don't know, because doing enough research and finding that kind of stuff, maybe it won't be. Well, maybe it isn't as much as people really think it is.
I think it's more intimidating than anything.
Yeah, definitely.
So here's my question is, does the love of the, like, land come before the desire to see it? Because I think that doing the research in reverse like that, like, say it's a place that you're intrigued with, you've done research on the place itself, and then you decide I want to travel there. I'm going to research how I'm going to travel there. That to me seems, I guess, a little less intimidating. Does it usually happen like that, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think that that's a really good point that you bring up, and something that maybe I've never even been consciously aware of. Yeah, I think that it is. I know it definitely was with Peru for me. It was this land that I had dreamt about for as long as I can remember, for no reason in particular, but just that I felt a calling for it. And so I would find myself late nights researching ayahuasca retreats or, Spanish immersion programs and ancient ruins. And then like, wow, I've got to see this. And then finally like, okay, I'm going to go and see this. So planning it in that sense. But, in Peru, we were very structured, so we booked all of our flights within country ahead of time. We knew what date we were leaving what city. So I'm a planner. I am a strict planner. I mean, even with this, I have my notebook and I have my, I'm strategic in that sense. And I'm really working. I'm that way in my writings too, and I'm really trying to branch out in my life and not be so rigid and learn to be more flexible. So for Australia, Devin and I are kind of going in with a loose plan. We know where we're flying into and we know where we're flying out of. And however we get there is kind of how we get there. And whatever we see on the way is what we see on the way. Like, we have some cities picked out and like must-sees, but we don't have anything like set in stone, which gives me so much anxiety. But also as a traveler, I want to do that. I want the, you know what, I'm not feeling this city. Tomorrow, let's go somewhere else. And it not have been something I had put so much effort into planning. Like, I'm putting a lot of effort into planning, but in a different way, in a way that forces me to step outside my comfort zone, which I think is what travel is all about. Some of the greatest lessons you learn is when you push yourself past that barrier of what you feel, quote unquote, comfortable in.
No, for sure.
I love that.
I just had my first ever experience like that. Because I am like a control freak, for lack of a better term. So I would always have stuff like super planned out. But we went to Nick's mother's Indian reservation in Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
So it was amazing. It was beautiful. So we went up through the UP and down.
Okay.
Versus going underneath. We wanted to see the Upper Peninsula, and it had never been past the bridge. So, so it was a really cool experience. But we had no plans other than what date we had to be at the reservation to meet the rest of his family. We left 2 days early. It was me, Nick, and one of his cousins. And we just knew we wanted to stay somewhere in the UP. And it was interesting because none of the campsites had like bathrooms or electricity or water or nothing.
Primitive.
Yeah, it was a very primitive campsite, which I had never stayed at before. But fortunately, like, our neighbors took like pity on us.
Yeah.
So we like ate dinner with them and like spent the evening with them, and it was really cool.
That's cool.
It was a cool experience. Stepped outside
your comfort zone, but you had an amazing time, right?
Yeah,
you
will
would do
definitely.
it again.
you'll definitely enjoy it. So it was cool. It was really cool to just let go. So for sure. So those are your traveling tips. What about hiking tips? So like you have, I know that you're big on like gear, and you talked about your 35-pound packs. I know that you have like different survival tactics and stuff like that. So what are like some hiking / survival tips?
Yeah, so I kind of found, I never knew I liked hiking. I never thought of myself as a person who liked physical activity. I never grew up playing any sports or anything like that. So the idea of hiking never even sounded appealing to me. And I went to Peru, and our first weekend when we were in Cusco, we went to Lake Titicaca with some of our friends from the school, and we ended up hiking up a mountain, and it was my first time ever hiking. And it was so difficult because we're situated at like 15,000 or like probably there 13,000 feet. So oxygen is like so thin there. Not really knowing what I was getting myself into, but I had hiking boots on because I knew, I was like, well, I'm going to Peru, I better get some hiking boots type of thing. Didn't know what hiking entails. And it was just one of those things that I kind of just threw myself into and was like, okay, this is what we're doing now. And it stuck, and I'm absolutely obsessed. So for hiking, I really think that you get started with it by going to your local parks, your state parks, checking out the trails around, you. I know there's, by us, Island Lake and Kensington have quite an extensive trail system. I've never personally hiked it. I've heard really good things about it. The UP, I've done quite a bit of hiking up there. Our state has some really great backcountry hikes to do. I think that it's one of those things, another where I give credit to Google, really just hiking in Michigan, backpacking in Michigan type of thing is a great place to start for someone who might think they like hiking but don't necessarily know, or whatever state you're in if you're not in Michigan. I'm just kind of talking for us here.
For sure.
Yeah, and then just whenever you go somewhere, I like to look at what kind of state, metro, national parks are around us and check them out, because some of the trails are very manageable. And if you go to any park services office, they'll have maps and they'll be able to give you information. And there's an app called AllTrails that's really helpful. If you know a trail name, you can look it up and it'll tell you its rating, whether it's easy, moderate, hard. People will rate it, leave it reviews, give an extensive description of what you can expect, so you can know what to prepare for, because it's not always easy. And I've definitely done some hikes that tested my own strength and been like, okay, I think we might have bit off more than we can chew here, but we got to push through. We're in this middle of this boulder field. Like, if we're like, we can't just die here. So we're either going back through all that we just went through, or we're continuing on. So forcing yourself almost. And I think that sometimes I'm guilty of it. I know when I'm hiking, especially hiking with the 35-pound back, we talked a lot about it on the island, was so much you get caught with your eyes down at your feet, planning your every next step, that you forget to pause and what you're really there for. You're there to experience nature. You're there to experience those sights. And we get so caught up in, oh, my back hurts, or how many more miles do we have to go? When really it's not about the destination. It's not about the overlook that you're getting to at the end of a hike. It's really the whole journey. It's learning how you push yourself, what you're capable of physically, mentally, emotionally. I can't tell you how many times I've cried on the trail and like threw a little hissy fit and threw my backpack off and said, I'm done, But what are you going to do? You pick it back up and you trudge forward. And when you look back on it, you say, holy shit, I am a badass mountain woman and I did it. And that is just something that keeps me going. It's what really brings me to keep going back. So I don't know if that really answered the question.
Yeah.
I know, I'm like chills all the way down.
It's kind of tough. I feel like hiking is just start with your local trails around you and then move up.
No, that's so awesome. So I think we've covered pretty much everything. We have talked about your traveling your different experiences with traveling, with different crystals, with finding your soulmate, with embracing your womanhood. We talked about all of it, with being a moon goddess and with awakening that spiritual being that is always inside of you. I just feel so enlightened. Yeah.
Me too.
Well, good. I was happy to share the knowledge with everybody, and I'm always open for learning more. If someone knows more about me, more than me, on any of these topics that I talked about, I would love for them to contact me and share their knowledge, because that's how we really build this community, and that's, our role. We're storytellers.
Yes. The wild woman in all of us. But speaking of, if someone were to reach out to you, how would we do so?
Yeah, so first, I think that it would be really cool if anybody wants to check out my blog. So I currently use WordPress. I'm using the free version for now because I don't really know if I'm trying to make a business venture out of it, or, right now I'm kind of just doing this for me and for all of you guys to share. So if you want to check out my blog, it's Wild Woman Wanderess. All one word. Wanderess is spelled WANDERESS.wordpress.com. Yeah, so if anybody would love to check that out, and if anybody is more of a in-person type of learner or wants to speak further with me, I'm actually going to be sharing at an event called PechaKucha Night, which is an event that's hosted all around the world. It's a format 20 by 20, so in essence, it's a PowerPoint slide with 20 pictures on it. Each slide is for 20 seconds, and I just get up there and talk about what's going on my slides. And so I'm going to be talking about travel in it, so if anyone wants to hear a little bit more. So it's basically what I do, traveling, what travel means to me, finding myself spiritually, more in depth about that, starting the travel blog, my journal ventures, because I'm an avid journaler, all of that. So that's actually going to be October 17th. I'm thinking it's around 6 p.m., but they have not released an actual time yet, but it's usually in the evening. It's in Detroit, so it's at Hunt Street Station, which is a co-working space in Detroit that is kind of like a small business incubator, which has a really cool history to the building as well. So if anyone wants to come to that, it's at 2200 Hunt Street in Detroit, Michigan on October 17th. Yeah, and then I'm also talking more about the women's circles. I have a couple girlfriends that I met at my women's retreat who we are starting women's circles here in Southeast Michigan. So if you go on Facebook, you can find us under Pandora's Circle. We do not have an exact date set for our next circle, but we're thinking the week of October 8th. So if you just add that or like that Facebook page, or even add me on Facebook or Instagram, you'll see me posting updates about it. But if you are more interested in communing with fellow women about things that we talked about and so much more, maybe you bring some special gifts to the table and you want to share those with others, we are so glad to receive that and would love to have you hold that space with us. Yeah, so if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm under Wild Woman Wanderess. And then if you want to find me on Facebook, it's just Chelcee Etchison. I'm sure I'll be included in the link, and
yes,
it'll state it there because it's spelled all funky for you.
Yep, we are going to definitely have links to get in touch with Chelcee in the show notes. So if you would like to reach out with her, definitely go ahead and click that link. It'll be in the show notes for you guys. Chelcee, you were so wonderful.
You really
guys
are.
so
I love
much
your
for
aura.
hosting.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
We just enjoyed every second of this, right from the second you walked in the door. We all just kind of bonded instantly over nerves a little bit, but I think that I would be happy to say that has definitely eased in the room for sure. I think we all definitely feel very comfortable here, and I definitely feel like we learned a lot.
Yes.
And you have so much to say, and honestly, I already can't wait to have you back.
Oh, thank you.
I know,
so much.
honestly.
So, if you want to contact Chelcee, we got the links for you in the show notes. We hope this episode finds you well, and we will see you guys next week.